Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, lovers of small businesses and good stories in general. Welcome to episode 126 of Small Business War Stories. And happy 4th of July. Tomorrow, we're excited to share with you today's episode. It's actually kind of a good, it's a good fit for a 4th of July episode. Today I had the opportunity to sit down with Brian Phillips, who is an Americana artist. And he basically paints pieces of reclaimed construction material, and like he creates art out of old doors, out of old boards, and all kinds of. He has really cool designs. A lot of them based on the iconography of Texas and Texas music and Americana in general. And it's very much worthwhile to check out his art. I have one of his pieces hanging in my house, and to be honest, you should too. So you should go check him out and see what he's doing. But we talk about the business of art and the business, what it means to have the commitment and the belief to make it as an artist. The notion of, and this is something we've discussed before in the podcast, like, is it selling out to sell your art? Who should and shouldn't choose art as a career, and what does it take? And those are all really important, difficult questions. And Brian has plenty of stories. We met originally at Willie Nelson's ranch, so he has lots of cool stories that he shares with our audience. Today's episode is brought to you by Gusto. And Gusto is a company that helps you do all the things that you don't want to do. So you don't want to do payroll. You don't want to have to deal with all the nightmares of dealing with the administrative side of your business. Gusto helps you. That's Gusto. Go to gusto.com/war stories and get 3 free months when you sign up. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode, number 126, with Brian Phillips in Austin, Texas. And we are live here in beautiful Austin, Texas. And today I have the pleasure and honor to sit here with Brian Phillips, who is a salvage wood artist here in town.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So we met, it's a lot of weird connections here. We met at Luck Reunion.
Yep.
At Willie Nelson's ranch out in Spicewood.
Yeah.
And that, as we were talking about right before we started rolling, was also the subject of actually episode number 100.
Okay.
So Matt Beiser, who is the founder there.
Yeah.
And then we visited one of your shows.
Yep.
And I currently have in my home one of your pieces.
Yes. Honored.
Yeah. No, I'm honored. It's awesome. It's really cool. And we'll get to a little bit more about your design, I think. And so yeah, it's really exciting for me to talk to you. We've had a few folks in the past, including Dan Grissom, who we talked about,
right?
Talking about how to approach art from the perspective not only of a creative endeavor, but also as a business endeavor.
Right.
But I'd love to hear a little bit. How did you get started doing this? What is it? How did you end up in the spot that you are today as an artist?
Well, first of all, it was definitely not a plan. It wasn't a future plan it was a pipe dream for sure to be a full-time artist. But I think as a society, we have trained our kids to not pursue that route because, it's just a hobby, or, you want to do something that can make you money. Art can't make you money. So I was probably programmed that way.
I think most of us were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to educate people not to, subscribe to those rules anymore. But my wife and I were looking to move down to Austin, and I had just quit my job that I hated with every ounce of my soul.
What were you doing?
I was doing graphic design for a screen print company, and just an atmosphere that I didn't like. And it was a time to where I needed to move on. So I just quit and took some part-time jobs here and there just to pay bills. And, then we had set the time to move down to Austin and
And you were not, where were you at the time?
Indianapolis.
India.
Yeah. And I told my wife I would just try to get a couple shows, sell my art until I found a job down here. And the first show I was offered was at Revival Cycles during East Austin Studio Tour.
Okay.
And that one went so well that I was kind of flabbergasted and said, oh, this might be a thing. And it gave me enough money to, pay my bills for a few months, keep the ball rolling. So I just kind of kept going with it.
How long ago was that?
That was 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
8 years. And was your art that you were doing back then similar as it just evolved along the same vein, or is it completely different?
It's definitely taken a huge turn, more towards Western theme, Texan theme, based art pretty much. Definitely different style as well, growth. But it was still, welcomed with open arms and did very well. And once I started getting more shows and still paying my bills, I wasn't freaked out as oh my gosh, what am I going to do for rent, or the mortgage next month or whatever. Yeah. And then it just kind of became a decision.
Yeah.
It's
important to have those bases covered, right? So yeah. I found myself in times in my life when I've been in financial dire straits, right, I just become stupider and like more scared, and like I just don't I don't do as well, and like I lose like an edge. So it's like important, like that feeling of like, okay, I may not be super rich, but at least there's enough, and then there's so many opportunities and options open from there.
Right, and that's what I tell people. As long as my bills are paid and I have $5 in my pocket to buy a sandwich, I'm pretty good. So, that's awesome. So that's basically, in a nutshell, how this all transpired. And it wasn't planned. It was just kind of happened organically. And I've had a couple part-time jobs since then, but it was more to get me out of the studio because I found myself making my own language with my dog and forgetting how to communicate with the outside world. And it was more of a way to keep in touch with my friends and my coworkers.
What were you doing?
So, screen printing at Bearded Lady Screen Printing over on the east side, and then before that was Kong Screen Printing on the east side. So good people and great part-time jobs.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different, I guess, business models associated with being an artist. You can do sell your pieces at art galleries. You can have your own art gallery. You can have. I interviewed this guy Mick Whitcomb, who him and his wife go from show to show. So he lives in Springfield, Missouri, and he makes these beautiful lamps out of old objects and Edison bulbs. And they go, they spend 200 days a year on the road. And then there's also, I don't know, what you tell me. What are the different ways what's worked best for you to sell your art, and why do you think that is?
Yeah, for me, so far it's just been having shows. Any show I could get, I would take for the first 5 years, and that grew my audience and helped me build, beginning collectors up to, seasoned collectors that wanted my stuff. And I honestly give full kudos to the people that do run the art show or the art fair circuits, because I can't grasp how they do it. To have the money to travel, to have the money for housing, hotel, fuel, and still be able to make enough product to travel around, with weather being a factor in your sales.
Yeah. We talk about it for a full episode with Mick, but it's definitely a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, it is incredible that people can do that, and I envy them. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm pretty happy with just being at home by myself, and it's quiet. And so for me, it's just been definitely gallery representation. I love the galleries I'm represented by, and I, hope they know how much I appreciate them showing my work. And I also do, online sales through my web store. And I've tried to be as diverse as I can with the price points, $2 up to thousands of dollars. You
Yeah.
know? So stickers.
That's a brilliant move.
Yeah.
Because in many ways you want to allow the customer who appreciates your art to price differentiate themselves, right?
Exactly. And
because a piece of art that you sold me is a perfect example of that.
yeah, exactly.
You sold me a, what is it, $40 or $50 version?
It was $40. Yeah.
Of something that the original cost, what, 5,000?
It was close to 3,000. Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
So it was it's this beautiful, large. Yeah, I guess what it was. No, that wasn't a door, was it?
no, it was just on slats of salvaged wood put, you know, on a stretcher bar. I don't know.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's this awesome like image. I mean, it's really really creative. It's an amazing image of a guitarist and songwriter with
Right.
like all kinds of different iconic words, phrases, sayings, and ideas.
Country singers,
painted all over.
Yeah.
I think it transcends country. I mean, there's a lot of country in there,
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of.
but I think it
country.
transcends country, right? There's a lot of like soul in that piece. I don't know. I really appreciate it, but I think
Thank
it's
you.
brilliant from a business perspective what you're doing of allowing the customer to price differentiate themselves.
Right.
Because that's a double-edged sword both ways. Because if you only have $5,000 pieces, then nobody will buy. You'll price out people who don't have that money.
Exactly.
But if you only have $2 pieces,
Yeah.
there might be somebody who's willing to pay $5,000.
Right. And that's the thing is as an artist, I'm a collector as well. So I know how exciting it is to see a piece of art that you love that you can afford.
Yeah.
And to know that, when people tell me, I get so happy when I look at this piece of yours hanging in my kitchen. That means the world to me, you know? So I don't care if I'm making $5,000 on that piece or $50 on that piece. Just knowing that I'm bringing a smile to somebody's face and this world is pretty much what I'm going for.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look at that every day. So.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, I like being in my studio and I like working on commissions and stuff rather than doing the art fair, being away from my family and house. I like to kind of stay centralized in my studio, my home. So.
Yeah. Do you have people that discover you online in some other way and then buy some of the bigger pieces remotely, or does that ever happen?
Yeah, for sure. Instagram is where most people find my work. I mean, I shouldn't say most people, but online sales definitely get driven by Instagram. A lot of people see my stuff during holiday shows and East Austin Studio Tour and stuff like that. So that helps drive people, to my Instagram page or my website, which, hopefully gets them to the store section if they want to look around and see what I have.
Let's talk about Instagram a little bit because Instagram or whatever social media is preferred by each individual person does have played an important role for a lot of people in disseminating their art or message. But it's also it's this weird thing. Like everybody does it, but it's also really intimidating for people. What are some of the strategies and some of the things that you found for you that work really well that you could share with other people in terms of what's worked for you on Instagram?
That's a good question. I think basically just have fun with it and show your workspace. People love seeing where you work and, be real about it. But, if there's a, crushed beer can, you might want to just toss it before you take a picture. I don't know. It's weird what people zone in on and what people take away from each little post. And, I try not to overpost because I know there's a fine line between marketing and being annoying. And I never want to, be annoying. I just want to say, oh, here's a new piece,
So what does that specifically mean for you? How often do you post?
I used to post, once every couple of days. Now it's close to once a week because I don't have a lot of work coming out right now. So I try not to just post anything. But I do share work when it's coming out. But another thing is like the one thing that Instagram has added that has helped a lot is you can follow hashtags instead of following people. So if someone's following a hashtag reclaimed wood art and I hashtag reclaimed wood art, it will pop up in their feed. So that helps kind of get your work in front of people, and you take advantage of that because it's just it's a way of getting your work in front of people that may have never seen it before.
So that's a great tip. What are the specific things that you tag that you have found bring you attention?
Hashtag Texas brings me a lot, and that's basically how my art has been described. And I'm definitely it's been influenced by my surroundings for sure, because I feel like I've found my place in the world, and I love Texas. And so a lot of people come to me through that, and a lot of people come to me through, when I hashtag my abstract pieces. They're looking for abstract, and I do some abstract, and I have about 5 different styles. Okay. So I try to hashtag each style so it helps me get a broader audience.
Awesome. Yeah. So you talk about, reclaim wood art. Let's talk about that as a medium for a minute. Why is that important for you? You do a lot of really interesting things where you paint on old doors and you take, slats and stack them on top of each other. I mean, I'll let you describe some of the things you do, but why is that important to you?
Basically, that's the way I've been since we were kids. We didn't have a lot of money, so we were always just finding stuff in the woods or in a dumpster and taking it home and building stuff out of it. And I think it kind of just transpired, but one day I was just bored about 15 years ago, and I was working on my first house that I bought in Indianapolis, and there was just this little pile of little pieces of scraps from this shelf that I built. And I was just bored, so I was like, oh, what if I put these together and, gessoed over them and did a painting on top of it? And I was immediately hooked. And then I realized I was painting over all this very cool patina color and nail holes and cracks of paint and, just these coats and coats of paint that people would put through the years. And to me, it has an energy for sure, because there's a story behind every coat of paint and there's a story behind every nail hole. And I was driven to kind of leave that alone, let that do the work for me with the colors and the basically the energy of the piece of wood. And it's just kind of morphed into its own style to where I think people are really drawn into it because they see like a little carpenter ruler and it'll flash back, oh, my grandpa used to carry one of those around, or just I don't know. I love the reaction it gets. And I try to do pieces that will draw you in and just get your imagination going. Like, where did he get this stuff from? So, so it's important for me, I guess, just to also show the world that how wasteful of a world we live in. Mm-hmm. We're throwing away all these resources that can easily be reused to make cool stuff, from anything from birdhouses up to affordable housing. It's crazy to me what I see thrown out in the trash.
Yeah, what's the craziest thing you ever found in the trash?
I don't know. Me and my brother used to find some crazy stuff, like full stereos, and we would take them home thinking for sure they're not going to work, and they would be totally fine. So that was part of my childhood would be just like making these discoveries of treasure in these dumpsters, and we're like, who throws this stuff away? It's just mind-boggling to us. So, so I definitely think doing that as a child has helped me I've always been scanning, the ground to look for cool stuff and interesting stuff. And it's kind of been a skill set that has helped me even now, because I find, crazy little trinkets and stuff that go well in my art,
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, we'll take a quick break here from the conversation to do a quick bit about our sponsor, Gusto. That's Gusto. I want you to ask yourself, why did you start your business? Or if you haven't started it yet, why do you want to start your business? It's probably to do things that you're passionate about. And very few people I've come across in my travels are really passionate about running payroll or about dealing with benefits. Those are all things you have to do, especially if you have employees as you start growing. But they are a pain in the butt. I know I've dealt with it before. When I started my business, and it was certainly something that as soon as possible I try to find somebody to help me with. So you should go check out Gusto, Gusto. Go to gusto.com/war stories And when you sign up there, you get 3 free months when you run your first payroll. So go check it out. And now we'll get back to the conversation with Brian. Let's talk a little bit about art and business and the concept and idea of selling out versus creativity and authenticity. So this is something that came up in the show we did with Dan Grissom of Biscuit Press here in Austin. He's a very accomplished poster artist.
Right.
And
I love his work.
Yeah, he's really, really good. But we talked about how there's, with a lot of artists, this notion that if you start selling your art, or maybe even like what you do, reproducing the larger pieces into, smaller metal pieces and things like that, reproductions, that you're quote unquote selling out. And there's like something about the art that's lost in that sense, right?
Yeah.
Now, that can be a pretty dangerous way to think, because if it's almost like a self-imposed limitation, and it precludes people from actually living and continuing to do that a lot of times. So how do you see it? How do you think about that in your world?
I'm happy to sell out to anybody that will write me a check to Brian Phillips.
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest. Like, since I didn't go to school for art, I never had it pounded into my head that art was this precious thing that we need to protect. And as a kid, making art made me happy. And as an adult, making art makes me happy. And it's a meditative, therapeutic thing for me that I think I really need in my life. And if, like I, mentioned earlier, to know that my art brings a smile to someone's face is just the biggest compliment someone can give me.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, if it pays the bills and it keeps you doing what you're happy doing, I'd say make your own call on that, because to me it's getting your work out there, it's paying your bills, and it's keeping you going in the right direction, and that's what's important to me.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk a little bit too. A lot of people in the art community. I mean, there's certainly like a lot of mental health and like depression issues, and a lot of creativity. A lot of times comes from that delta, right? Like the sort of friction that happens there. You see that a lot in music. You see that a lot with the different types of art. How do you see that? And have you come across any of that? And what's your perception?
Yeah, that's actually how I got back into art.
Okay.
I suffered a deep depression when I was 21, and had suicidal thoughts, and it came on so quick that it just really threw me for a loop. And at the time, I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Like, I know I didn't want to be miserable all the time, and I just found myself being miserable. But after that happened, luckily I reached out to someone, and I tell this story freely, just simply to help people understand this is totally normal. Like, when you have these thoughts, it's your mind saying, let's do something different, let's change something, and let's get help. And so talk to somebody about it. But when I went to talk to a counselor, she immediately got me back in. She said, if you have a hobby, get back into it, start a journal. And I immediately went back into art, and that was 27 years ago. And I always say art saved my life, and it was, definitely a step in the right direction, because I'm not sure what I would do. I'm not sure what I would be doing now if I hadn't always been into art.
Yeah.
And creating and doing things with my hands. And so I definitely pour a lot of myself into my art. And when I go into the studio, it's very therapeutic for me, because I lose hours at a time, and it's so freeing to get all that creative energy released. And I'm sure you go through that with music. And
oh yeah.
And I'm very lucky. So
for me, actually, a lot of times. So I also, suffer sometimes from, anxiety and a lot of issues like that. And the reason I have a shop in my house is because getting back to doing something with your hands, and like building guitars or sanding and painting things, designing things, it's getting out of your head and onto the physical world.
Right.
And that to me has been really valuable. So.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was trying to get at, is just releasing it from your mind, like just even it's writing down an idea and
Yeah.
saving it for later. It's
Yeah. And also recognizing that it's still you. Like
Yeah.
it's not. We somehow, we fight ourselves all the time, and we're both the punisher and the punished.
oh yeah,
But for some bizarre reason, we always identify with the punished,
yeah,
even though the one doing the punishing is also us.
yeah, absolutely. And
So,
and then we have to reground ourselves, saying, do you understand how lucky you are to be doing what you love?
yeah,
And it brings everything in a different light. And I'm like you, I have pretty bad anxiety, a lot of nervous energy. I don't sit still well, but it's good
well,
because
I don't know why you say I'm like you. I hear you. I'm with you.
it just helps me. Staying busy just helps me stay fulfilled and creating something positive way.
Yeah,
Because I had lost that for a long time before the depression, and it
yeah.
for sure showed.
Let's talk about the gratitude and like feeling so lucky. What are some experiences? I mean, obviously, showing your art at Willie Nelson's ranch, I would say, is probably a pretty cool one. But can you think of other experiences and things that have happened because of your art and that you kind of you kind of look at yourself and like, man, this is really happening.
Yeah, just doing it for a living is crazy to me.
Yeah.
And it's just something that as a kid, little kid in Ohio drawing with crayons on his, drawing pad, you never picture being, somebody paying good money for your work and then writing you an email telling you how happy it makes them.
Yeah.
It's something that I'll never hopefully take for granted. I don't ever see myself taking it for granted, but sometimes I lose track of, I get too stressed out because I have a show coming up or a project coming up, and I have to remind myself, like, you got hired because you have fun with your work. Don't make it too much trouble. You want the fun to come out in the work, but working with, I'm being totally serious when I say selling a $25 painting means just as much to me than getting hired by a company like Facebook to do a whole wall in their headquarters. It's a huge compliment, but it all comes back to someone appreciating my work.
Yeah.
And it helps me kind of stay, keep my head up, because I don't, it's hard to explain, but all I want to do is have fun with my work and have people have fun with my work.
Yeah.
And that's basically the bottom line. Is I'm not looking to conquer the world. I want to continue to be happy and make others happy around me.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Can you think of a time when things went really wrong in your business, and what did you do about it?
I think basically when I first started, I had a lot of trouble with the ebbs and flows of income, because it definitely is feast or famine. And one minute you're thinking it's never going to stop and I'm always going to be making money, and then sometimes you're like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? And it's nothing. It's just the way the energy of the universe works, I guess.
Slow, yeah.
And so that really freaked me out in the beginning, because when you see your savings trickling down to the point where you're like emergency, you kick into survival mode and you just get shows and you just diversify. And that actually helped me diversify in a lot of ways when it came to price points, styles, more than one gallery representation, and try to broaden my audience through social media instead of just local.
Okay,
shows.
So those strategies have led you to have, I guess, a more predictable flow.
Yeah, I definitely have fallen behind on the commissions. I need to get caught back up on the commissions wise, which is it's a good thing. But it's good to have people that are understanding about workload and how you can't. Sometimes you cannot make something happen. So you kind of have to wait for that day where you wake up and you're like, time to do that piece that's been sitting there on my list
Tell
for
me more
6
about that.
months.
So there's like different schools of thought on this, right? So there's God, I'm gonna butcher. I forget the writer, so I'm not even gonna try to remember who it was. But somebody who said that they only wrote when they were inspired, and they were inspired 9 a.m. every morning.
Okay.
Meaning like they just yes or yes will sit down because great writers write.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other people who are a little bit more. I just you need to kind of channel something else, and if it's not there, it's not there, and you can't force it. And from a songwriting perspective, I just read a quote the other day that Leonard Cohen was having a conversation with Bob Dylan, where Leonard Cohen took 3 years to write Hallelujah, and then Bob Dylan was talking about one of his songs that's a hit that took him 15 minutes.
Right.
So then where do you fall on the spectrum?
I definitely fall on the latter. Like I wake up in a different mood every day, so I try to make that work, in the studio. Sometimes I just don't feel like painting, so I'll pull the saws out and start constructing my little, salvage wood assemblages that I do paint on, and then I stockpile those. So when I am ready to paint, I'll just start picking through to see which one hits me for that certain painting.
Yeah.
So that's helped me keep a flow and keep the creative blocks from catching up with me too bad. But
have you gotten into a real bad funk ever? With
one time,
blocks?
before I was full-time artist, I didn't pick a paintbrush up for 2 years, and that hurt, because I was like, it's never coming back. I'm never going to get it back. And then just one day, I started working, and it hasn't stopped since.
Yeah.
So. Luckily, I have enough ideas running around in my big, empty brain.
But at the same time, I do think that sometimes, even if you don't feel like it, it's kind of like working out. There are days when the last thing in the world I want to do is work out, but like you step 1 foot in there, and that's all it takes.
Absolutely.
Right? Sometimes just like that one note that you play on the guitar, you're not playing for 45 minutes, or like the one stroke of the brush.
Absolutely, and I do have little study paintings that I do. Like the small pieces are the ones I work on in the morning, and it helps me kind of get the cobwebs out and drink some coffee and get the day started. But it helps that, it helps me tell whether it's going to be a good day of painting or just hang up the brush and pull the saws out. And that's helped me a lot. It's taught me a lot about myself, because I do not try to push creatively.
Yeah.
I don't try to push pieces out the door just to get paid.
And how long does it take? I mean, so let's think about a specific. So did you sell that piece that you had at Willie Nelson's ranch, the one that was a big door full of all the names?
No, I still have that one.
So you still have it. How? That's it. So to describe it a little bit better, it's an old door, right?
Yeah, it's an old door.
And it's got how many names on it?
Oh, I've never counted it, but I would say close to 75.
Close to 75, and there's a lot of, and it looks amazing, and it's all in your own special font.
Thank you.
It's all different singers, right?
Right.
And artists, musicians.
So most of them are names of country singers that I picked the most recognizable ones. So if it was Buck Owens, I would pick Buck, because when you say Buck, when it comes to country music, you know who I'm talking about. But so that started.
I would like to someday buy that. Well, if it's still available. How much is it? It was a few $1,000.
$2,850.
Yeah, $2,850. So if anybody let's listen to this podcast. And likes music or Texas culture, country music, do go get that, because I wish I could.
No, thank you.
But how long did it take you to do that?
Man, that thing bounced around in my brain for a good year before I actually started it. And I had this old door that my friend gave me from his backyard, been sitting outside. So I just started doing these freehand lines across. At first I was going to do a T-square with these really straight lines. And I was like, no, I want these to look hand lettered. So I just, drew them freehanded, so they would be off a little bit. And then just started mapping out these names. And then everything is freestyled. Nothing's drawn out beforehand. And it took me... And this is the thing, I'm not very good with sticking, like my attention span is pretty small. So when I started this, I was like, I have to finish it once I start it. And I did not know what I was getting myself into, because it was 3 weeks of solid studio time, 8 hours a day. and it almost drove me insane.
Wow.
but I'm so happy with the result.
It looks incredible.
To hear you say that, it means a lot to me.
Oh, it means a ton to me. Have you made reproductions of that one?
I did small prints, but it just doesn't translate smaller.
Yeah, it's so damn good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks.
What's the number one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody who is maybe an artist, who loves doing it, who's considering turning into their career, who's thinking about doing this as a business?
Try to always keep it fun, and try to always keep that edge of fun. And you can be totally serious, but you can have fun while you're being serious. But I guess the biggest thing I had to learn was to treat it as a business, mm-hmm. and put a value on your time that you would like to earn, and stick to it. And there are going to be times when you sway off of that, because everybody needs some cash every once in a while. But stay true to what you want to make, mm-hmm. because that's going to make you prouder of your work and make you move forward in a confident way. And the confidence will transpire into your work. But also learn quickly that you can do without a lot more than you think, because money does not mean as much as you think it does until you're faced with either happiness or money, and you always choose happiness. And once I realized to stop chasing the money, start chasing happiness, it all kind of fell into place. And I'm not making so much money I don't know what to do with it, but I don't worry about money as much as I used to, simply because I know I don't need as much as I thought I needed before.
Yeah, there's two ways to be rich, right? You either make more or you need less.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's been a big revelation for me, and I wish I would have learned it sooner. But between, I hope I made sense in all that, but basically just take the big step, and you'll learn so much about yourself and how you deal with adversity, and whether you like doing or not. Some people, it's just not a good fit. And, you recognize that just as you would recognize it with any other employer, mm-hmm. So, but if it stops being fun for you, try to move into a different direction.
That's awesome. So. Where can people find you? If anybody's interested in buying your art and snatching that door away from you, where can people find you? What are your handles on Instagram, your website, and so forth?
My Instagram handle is @artbybrianphillips, and you can find my website artbybrianphillips.com.
Okay.
And there's a store section or all kinds of stuff. The most current work is definitely on Instagram. I have a Facebook page, Art by Brian Phillips, as well. So
awesome. Brian Phillips, artist extraordinaire.
Yes.
Salvage wood master from Austin, Texas. Thank you so much for sharing your story in the show.
Thank you for having me, Pablo. I appreciate it, man.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Take care.
See ya.
Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.